Good morning and welcome to Aliyah Yomi. Today we are beginning Parshas Bechukosai. Bechukosai is a parsha of 78 psukim, and the first Aliyah is 3 psukim, running from Perek Chavav Pasuk Gimel to Hey. The topic of our Aliyah is very simple, and that is the reward of Mitzvos. The Torah tells us that in Bechukosai Teilechu Ves Mitzvosai Tishmeru V'Asisem Osam, that if you're going to go in my statutes and keep my mitzvahs, then there's a lot of then, and that's going to take up this aliyah, the second aliyah, and the beginning of the third aliyah. There's a whole set of rewards that will come. In our aliyah, we're told, "V'nosati gishmechem be'itam," the rain will be at the right time. Water is a blessing at the right time, the right places. It is a curse at the wrong time and the wrong places. It's going to be at the right time. And all the fruit and the trees will giving their fruits at the right time, and it's going to be that the seasons will interact with each other. You're going to be still plant. You're going to still be harvesting when the planting season comes. It's going to be such an abundance as well. You're going to eat your bread in satiation and dwell in your land securely. A lot of things to think about in Aliyah. First, very basic point is, what is it that we need to do to achieve this reward? So, and the first thing is just on the most basic level is keeping the mitzvos. That's the second part of the phrase. But what's the first part of the phrase? Bechukosai teilechu. It's interesting that Oznaim Torah has a very fascinating observation where he points out chukos literally means laws. And so what is this referring to? Is that Hashem's laws are actually in consonance with the laws of the world around us. If we are in line with the laws of Hashem's spiritual, metaphysical rules, then the physical rules that follow suit around us will also fall into place. But Rashi actually quotes a medrash which says, very important medrash, which is, what does it mean? Bechukosai teilechu is shetiu amelim b'Torah. You need to be amelim, which literally means toiling in the Torah. What does this mean? Where does Rashi get this from? How do we understand this? So the Chavetz Chaim actually makes a very interesting observation. He says this helps us understand a very interesting phrase that we say in the Siyam HaMesechta, when we conclude a Siyam on a Mesechta. What is that we say? Anu amelim v'hem amelim. So we're just finishing learning a section in Torah, and we say we are involved in working in our learning of Torah, and they are involved in their work. Meaning to say the people who are not necessarily involved in Torah. Anu amelim v'makablim sachar. We work and receive reward. V'hem amelim v'enem makablim sachar. They work and they do not receive reward. The Chavetz Chaim asks the very basic question: is that really true? After all, let's say anybody has a shop, a person who's a blacksmith or a tailor or a laundromat, they work and they get paid for what they work for. It's not a fair straw man to set up and say that the world that is outside of Torah does not get rewarded for their work. They get rewarded for their work commensurate to the work that they do. The Chavetz Chaim says, well, the answer actually is the word amelos, toil. In the world around us, generally speaking, it is an outcomes-based world, which means, let's say, for an example, you have a tailor, and he is contracted to make a tuxedo for somebody's wedding, and he does all the work, and he measures the person out, and he orders the materials, and he cuts it to size, and he sews it all together. He puts in a huge amount of work. Comes the week before the wedding, the groom comes to try on his tuxedo. Everything's beautiful, just he sewed on the arms the wrong way, and it doesn't fit. Terrible. So the fellow gets very upset, walks out the store, and leaves. And as he's out the door, the tailor runs after him and says, but I put in so many hours of effort. And the customer or the prospective customer then says to him, that doesn't make a difference. I didn't get a tuxedo. In the end of the day, we pay based on outcomes. And what's being described over here is not outcomes-based. It's effort-based. What the word amelos means is the effort, the toil we put in. In the world around us, unless you have an outcome, unless you can show something for what your time was spent doing, it's valueless. In Torah, it is valuable, even the efforts that perhaps don't yield the most compelling results, don't yield these beautiful grand moments, these huge milestones, these watershed moments. There's still reward for that as well. That is what's Bechukosai teilechu, is you're walking. It's the process, not the outcome. And that's how we know that the walking is the process, and that's how Rashi gets us from here. Another interesting observation is, what is the bracha on food over here? We seem to have 2 phrases in our aliyah as to how it's going to be, how the food will work. One is, on the one hand, it will be this abundance, and that's the seasons overlapping with each other. The other one is, you'll eat your fruits l'sova, where Rashi explains, what does it mean that you'll eat your fruit in abundance? Rashi explains, a person will eat a little bit and then it'll be blessed in their stomach. That's what's being described over here. So what is interesting over here is an interesting observation, is surely if Hashem wanted to bless us, then just give us a lot of food. That should be sufficient. Why is this whole business about eating a little bit and being blessed a lot? Says the Torah is that there is generally a contradiction between too much indulgence and the ability to be able to appreciate the spiritual values in life. People who are very overindulgent or involved in their lusts and desires find it very hard to have bandwidth to be interested, to have the desire to be involved in value-based ideas, in ethereal, metaphysical, spiritual ideas. There's just no space left. A person's entire interest is governed and consumed. And that's how the consumer market works now. Is our attention is worth billions of dollars. That's why it's being paid for in advertising on any device, in any place that people traffic is a place which can be sold. Advertising space can be sold because our attention is worth a lot of money. Says the Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to involve in food, but perhaps it's going to be you don't have to eat so much. It doesn't need to be that you have a 7-course meal every meal of the day because of blessing. No, you can eat a little bit and still be happy. You can still have a diet which actually makes you feel good, not just makes your tongue feel good for 2 seconds. That's the observation which is being made over here. In fact, it relates to what's going to be said in 2 Aliyah's time, that the one of the blessings is achaltam yashon noshon. You'll eat old food. Yashon mibnei chadosh tatziu. You'll bring out the new food, the old food, because the new food is that a blessing that there should be so much waste? Says the Shem Yishmol that at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, there was simcha, real joy was expressed by the achilas basar v'yayin. That means the eating meat and wine. That doesn't mean to say just big parties. What they meant to say is that it's referring to the karbanos. When you had something which was involved in a spiritual process, meat and wine, which was used for the libations and for the meat of the karbanos, when one would partake of the parts that the outside people could partake in, that food had a spiritual quality. And you know what was interesting about that spiritual quality is that it did not deteriorate with age, because it had spiritual properties. Therefore, the physical properties which are usually in a process of deterioration, biodegradation, were actually overcome by the spiritual properties which are constant. Spirituality is not bound by time and therefore is not deteriorating with age. The food that had spiritual quality to it was therefore able to last longer. The Shem Shmuel does point out that we still have a me'ain, a little bit of this in wine, in the sense that wine is the only food which only appreciates over time with age. So it has that somewhat of that property still left in it. But at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, that was all karbanos and wine had this property as well. The blessing that's being said in our aliyahs over here is not only is that you're going to have good food and the food will last long, but the point is that it'll have spiritual qualities to the degree that it'll last long. That's what's being said over here. Is therefore even a little bit can be satiating because of the nature of its spiritual perspective being the central part of it. With this, we conclude the first aliyah. In the meantime, have a wonderful and meaningful